Hi, here's another family drama with really, I would say, complicated relationships. Let's listen.
My sister-in-law abandoned my 7-year-old daughter in a double-locked room and went to the cinema with her own daughter. She was spoiling everything, so we went without her, she said. When my husband found out, he sent her this, and she went pale. I was supposed to be gone until late afternoon, so when my appointment ended before lunch, I felt like I had been handed a small gift. It was a teacher workday, so both girls were out of school. My husband, Eric, was at work, and our 7-year-old daughter, Olivia, was home with his younger sister, Melissa. Melissa had begged for the babysitting shift. She said she needed income, that being a stay-at-home mom was getting tight, and that maybe childcare could become her real thing one day. Since she had a daughter, Avery, the same age as Olivia, I told myself it made sense. I even stopped for lemonade on the way home, thinking I could relieve Melissa early and maybe take both girls to the park. I remember smiling at a red light, proud of myself for trusting her. Then I pulled into the driveway and saw Melissa's car was gone. There was no chalk on the sidewalk, no scooter tipped by the porch, no little voices through the open window. At first I thought she had taken the girls somewhere close. Then I opened my front door, and the house did not sound like two children were inside. It did not sound like anyone was inside. I called, "Olivia?" and waited for the usual answer. Running feet, a question, a complaint about snacks. Nothing came back. The TV was off. The kitchen counter still had the craft supplies I had left out for the girls, but the glue was uncapped and one pink marker had rolled onto the floor. I called, "Melissa?" Louder that time. No answer. The clock on the oven blinked 12:18, which meant Melissa had been gone long enough to settle into wherever she was. I checked the back patio, the downstairs bathroom, the little reading nook under the stairs. Empty, empty, empty. I took out my phone to call Melissa, still trying to be reasonable. Maybe she had texted and I had missed it. Maybe she had taken the girls to lunch and forgotten to say so, even though that would have annoyed me. Then, from the hallway by the guest room, I heard a sound so small I almost missed it. It was not a word at first. It was a shaky breath, then a sniffle, like someone was trying very hard to cry quietly. I stepped toward it and said, "Liv?" A thin voice answered from behind the closed guest room door. "Mommy? Are they back?" I reached the door so fast my shoulder hit the wall. "Olivia, baby, are you in there?" The knob would not turn. The guest room used to be a home office, and the old door still had a keyed lock, plus a high slide bolt on the outside that we never used. Both were locked. I stared at them for half a second because my mind refused to put the pieces together. Then Olivia started crying harder. "I didn't open it. I promise. Aunt Melissa said I had to stay." My hands went numb, then too fast. I flipped the bolt, grabbed the little ring of spare keys from the hall drawer, dropped them once, and scraped the wrong key against the lock. "I'm here," I kept saying. "You're not in trouble. I'm getting you out." The lock finally turned. Olivia was standing in the middle of the room with her cheeks wet and her hands clenched in the hem of her shirt. There was no tablet, no water bottle, no snack. A half-finished crayon picture lay on the bed, the paper torn down the middle. Just my child, alone, waiting behind two locks. She did not run to me right away. That was the part that scared me more than the door. She stood there like she had to ask permission to be comforted. I knelt and opened my arms, and she stepped into them so hard we both nearly tipped backward. "I didn't mean to spoil it," she sobbed into my shoulder. "I tried to be good." I looked around the room while holding her. The window was shut. The old rug was bunched up where she must have paced. The closet light was on because she had been scared of the dim corners. Her socks were dusty, and one knee had a red mark from where she had sat on the rug. "Where is Aunt Melissa?" I asked carefully. Olivia shook her head. "At the movie." For a second I thought I had misheard. "What movie?" She whispered. "Avery wanted to go. I wanted to come too, but Avery said I asked too many questions. Aunt Melissa said I was ruining everybody's fun." I kept my voice soft because every answer seemed to make her smaller. Then she pressed both hands over her mouth as if she had already said too much. She pulled back just enough to look at me, terrified. She said I shouldn't snitch on family. I carried Olivia to the couch because her legs were shaking. Then I sat beside her with one hand on her back and the other already dialing Melissa. Melissa answered on the fourth ring, breathless and annoyed. "Heather, what? We're in the middle of previews." I said, "Where are you?" She sighed. "At the cinema with Avery. Olivia was being impossible." I heard candy wrappers and Avery laughing in the background. "You locked my daughter in a room and left my house?" There was a pause, but not the kind where a person realizes they have done something horrifying. It was the kind where she was deciding how much I knew. "She was safe," Melissa said. "That room is safe. She was spoiling everything, so we went without her." My voice went cold. "You told a 7-year-old not to tell me." Melissa clicked her tongue. "I told her not to be a little snitch. Kids need values, Heather. They can't run to adults every time they don't get their way." Olivia flinched at the word. The label had already hurt her, and I turned my body so she could not see my face change. I walked into the kitchen because I did not want Olivia to hear the sound that came out of me. "You were being paid to watch her." Melissa lowered her voice like I was embarrassing her. "And I did watch her. I handled a behavior issue. You're just dramatic because she cried." I looked at the lemonade bottles on the counter and felt foolish for every soft thought I had had on the drive home. "Come back right now." "We already bought tickets," she said. "The movie is starting. I'll bring Avery back after." I said, "You come back now, or Eric hears every word of this." Melissa gave one bitter little laugh. "Go ahead. He'll understand. He knows how Olivia can be when you baby her." That was when I understood this was not a misunderstanding, not an emergency, and not even panic. Melissa believed she had the right to punish my child, silence her, and still finish her outing. I hung up while she was still talking and called Eric. When I told him Olivia had been locked in a room while Melissa took Avery to the cinema, he did not yell. He went completely quiet. Then he asked one question in a voice I had never heard from him before. "Is our daughter safe now?" Later, Eric would send Melissa the proof that made her go pale. But before that message makes sense, you need to know what Melissa had always been in our lives. I met Eric when I was 24 at a friend's backyard cookout where he fixed a broken gate before anyone even asked. He was calm, useful, and the kind of man who noticed when somebody needed a chair. He brought dessert too, because he thought arriving useful and empty-handed was rude. When I teased him, he looked genuinely confused. At first, I thought that was just kindness. Then his phone started ringing. His mother, Janet, needed him to move a dresser. His father, Bill, needed him to look at a car issue. Melissa needed him to pick up a prescription she had forgotten, then asked if he could also bring coffee because she was tired. He did all of it without complaint, then apologized to me for being late to dinner. They just rely on me," he said, smiling like that explained it. "It's easier if I help." I liked that he loved his family. I did not yet understand they had turned his love into a job. The pattern became clearer after we got married. If Janet called, Eric answered. If Bill hinted, Eric offered. If Melissa cried, everyone looked at Eric as if his wallet and his Saturday belonged to her. Melissa was younger, yes, but she was not a child. Still, the family treated her like a permanent emergency. If she forgot a deadline, she was overwhelmed. If she quit something, it had not been right for her. If she needed money, it was never poor planning. It was bad luck. One Sunday, during lunch at Janet and Bill's house, Melissa announced that her phone bill was overdue and laughed like it was cute. Janet glanced straight at Eric. "Could you take care of that for your sister? She's had a hard week." Eric reached for his card before he looked at me. Melissa smiled across the table, not grateful, just satisfied. When I asked later why no one expected Melissa to call the phone company herself, Eric said, "Because then Mom will cry." That was the first time I saw it clearly. She did not ask him for help. She expected access. It was a system with smiles instead of locks, but it still kept him in place. When Melissa got pregnant at 19, the whole family reorganized around her. Eric was 26, and I was pregnant with Olivia at the same time. I thought that meant Janet and Bill would be excited for both babies. Instead, every conversation became about Melissa being young, scared, and not ready. At my baby shower, Janet spent 20 minutes telling people how brave Melissa was for facing motherhood. Melissa sat with one hand on her belly, accepting sympathy while I stacked gifts near the door. In the car, Eric squeezed my hand and said, "I'm sorry. They don't mean to ignore us." I wanted to believe him. Then Avery was born 2 months before Olivia, and the difference got worse. Melissa needed rides to appointments. Melissa needed diapers. Melissa needed someone to sit with Avery so she could sleep. When Olivia had colic and I had not slept, Janet still asked if we could take Avery for a few hours, because Melissa is fragile. Eric packed the diaper bag without being asked. We helped because a baby was involved, and nobody wanted an infant to go without. The problem was that helping once became the rule for every year after. At first, the help came with an expiration date. Melissa was going to finish school. Then she was going to find work. Then she was going to get stable. We babysat Avery during evening classes, brought groceries when she said the fridge was empty, and helped set up her apartment with furniture Eric found online and paid for himself. Every time Melissa crossed one finish line, she moved it. She got her degree, then said the job market was cruel. She found a job, then the manager was toxic. Another job had a schedule that did not respect motherhood. A third had a commute she called impossible, even though Eric drove farther every day. When Olivia and Avery turned 7, I looked at our calendar and realized Melissa still occupied whole chunks of our life. Her emergencies were written between Olivia's school events, my work deadlines, and Eric's one quiet night a week. If we hesitated, she sent photos of Avery beside an empty pantry shelf. Even vacations were planned around whether Melissa might need coverage or cash that week. If Eric ignored a call, Janet called me. I started keeping receipts just to prove to myself it was real. Nothing had ended. It had only become normal. Eric did try to draw lines, but his family knew exactly how to bend them. He told Melissa he would not pay for shopping, trips, takeout, or emergencies that sounded like last-minute wants. Janet praised him for being responsible, then called 2 days later because Melissa's rent was due. Bill would say, "We all do what we can," while doing almost nothing. So Eric covered essentials: rent, utilities, groceries, school supplies, winter coats for Avery. Melissa complained anyway. "He makes me feel like a charity case," she told Janet once, loud enough for me to hear. Janet replied, "He's your brother. Family helps family." I stood in their hallway with Olivia's backpack on my shoulder and bit my tongue until my jaw hurt. I did not want to be the wife who pulled a man away from his family. I told myself it was his decision to make. But each month, when our budget tightened because Melissa had another essential, I started wondering when our own household would count. No one called that unfair. They called it love. That sounded noble until I realized our daughter was growing up watching her father get drained. Then Melissa announced her childcare idea like she was unveiling a company. She had no license, no paperwork, and no real plan, but she had a name saved on her phone and a speech about flexible care for school-aged kids. Janet loved it. Bill called it entrepreneurial. Melissa said she needed a first client, someone who trusted her, and everyone looked at us. $20 an hour, she said, like she was giving us a deal. Eric looked embarrassed, and Melissa looked like we should be honored. I almost laughed. After years of free babysitting for Avery, she wanted to charge us to watch Olivia. Eric said we would think about it. Janet cornered him later and said, "Your sister is trying to stand on her own. Don't punish her for that." So we agreed to 2 short afternoons with Olivia at our house, where everything should have been familiar and safe. After those first 2 afternoons, Olivia was quiet but seemed fine, and Melissa texted invoices within minutes, complete with cheerful little emojis. The 3rd time, I paid her before I left because I wanted no drama. That was the day my appointment ended early. That was the day I learned what her care really cost. After Melissa refused to leave the cinema, I called Eric and told him everything in order. The missing car, the locked guest room, Olivia asking if they were back, the no-snitch warning. This time he spoke in short, sharp questions. "Locked how?" "Could she get out?" "Was there water?" "How long was she alone?" I answered each one, and each answer made the silence on his end heavier. I heard his office door close behind him. I heard a chair scrape, then keys. "I'm coming home," he said. "This is not a family disagreement. This is an emergency." I said Melissa was still at the movie. Eric made a sound like he had swallowed words that would not help Olivia. "Do not let her near our daughter when she comes back." I looked toward the living room, where Olivia sat curled under a blanket, watching me with red eyes. "I won't." He paused at his car door. "And Heather?" "Yeah?" His voice was steady, but it had lost every trace of the brother who always smoothed things over. "Save every text. Write down every word she said. I want this remembered exactly, not filtered through Mom by dinner." While Eric drove home, I sat beside Olivia with a cup of water and a peanut butter sandwich cut into triangles because my hands needed a task. She did not eat much. She kept touching my sleeve as if checking that I was still there. "You are not in trouble," I told her. "Telling me what happened is not snitching. Adults are not allowed to scare kids into silence." Olivia stared at the sandwich. "Aunt Melissa said family doesn't tell on family." "Safe families do," I said. "Safe families tell the truth." That got her eyes up. I asked gently if anything like this had happened the other times Melissa watched her. Olivia's mouth tightened. "She gets mad when Avery wants me to do things and I don't." "What things?" "Like give her first pick. Or say Avery wins. Or not tell when she pushes." My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice even. Do you want to stay with Aunt Melissa again? Olivia shook her head so fast her hair stuck to her cheeks. Never. I said, You won't. I promise. Even if Grandma says I have to? She asked. That was the knife. Even then, I said. Only then did she start sobbing again. Eric got home 20 minutes later, and I saw the fury in him before he reached the porch. His face was pale, his jaw locked, his work shirt half untucked from the rush. But when Olivia stood up, he changed. He dropped to one knee in the entryway and opened his arms. Come here, Bug. She ran into him, and he held her like he was afraid she might disappear. He did not demand the story. He asked small questions softly. Were you scared? Did you try to call us? Did she say when she would come back? Olivia whispered that Melissa said she was spoiling everything. She said Avery got to go because Avery was being fun. She said Melissa told her not to make things worse by telling. Eric closed his eyes once. When he opened them, he kissed the top of Olivia's head and said, You did nothing wrong. Then he looked at me over her shoulder. It was not loud anger. It was something colder. When she gets here, he said, I want Olivia upstairs with you. Olivia gripped his sleeve. Is she mad? Eric answered. She does not get to be mad at you. Melissa came back later that afternoon with Avery, carrying a soda cup and complaining about traffic. She walked into my house using the spare key code Eric had given her years ago and stopped when she saw him standing in the hallway. Oh, she said. You're home. Avery ran past us toward the kitchen, humming a song from the movie. Melissa looked annoyed, not afraid. Heather made this sound way more dramatic than it was. Eric did not move. You left my daughter locked in a room while you went to the cinema. Melissa rolled her eyes. I separated the girls because Olivia was ruining the outing. Avery was excited, and I wasn't going to let one tantrum wreck the whole day. You left her alone. In a safe room. Behind 2 locks. So she wouldn't wander around upset and hurt herself. Eric took one step forward, and Melissa finally seemed to notice his face. Don't look at me like that, she snapped. You know how kids are. 7 is old enough to sit somewhere and calm down. Then she added, Besides, I knew you two would turn this into a whole parenting performance. That sentence took away the last possible benefit of the doubt. Then Melissa made the mistake of treating it like a billing dispute. She tossed her purse onto a chair and said, Fine. If you're that upset, I'll send half back. I'm not unreasonable. Eric stared at her. You think a half refund fixes locking my child in a room? Melissa crossed her arms. I provided care until she became unmanageable. I stepped between the hallway and the stairs because Olivia was upstairs, and I did not want one more word reaching her. Melissa pointed at me. She babies Olivia. That's why she acts like this. Eric's voice stayed low. Have you ever left Avery alone like that? Melissa scoffed. For short periods, yes. She's not helpless. Sometimes I need to run downstairs, grab food, take a shower, whatever. Kids that age are fine. The room went still. Even Avery, halfway through stealing a cookie, looked at her mother. Eric said, You just admitted this is normal to you. Melissa blinked, realizing too late that she had given him the one thing he needed. Don't twist my words, she said. But he was already past twisting. Eric told Melissa to take Avery and leave. She laughed once, sharp and fake. You'll calm down, he said. You will never babysit Olivia again. You will not enter this house again. And I am done paying your bills. That made her face change, but only for a second. Don't be stupid. Rent, utilities, groceries, cards, subscriptions, school extras. Done. Melissa picked up her purse with a hand that was not as steady as before. Mom will talk sense into you. Eric opened the front door. Leave. After she drove away, he went to the computer without another speech. I watched him cancel the automatic rent transfer, remove his card from her utility accounts, shut off the family expense card, stop the grocery delivery payment, and screenshot every confirmation. He also changed our door code, deleted her from the pickup list at Olivia's school, and blocked her access to the shared streaming account she had used for years. Then he sent Melissa one message. No more money. No more access. Do not contact Heather or Olivia. He attached the proof. After that, we called Child Protective Services and reported what happened, including what Melissa admitted about leaving Avery unsupervised and treating it as normal. When Eric hung up, his hands were shaking, but his voice was calm. I am done rescuing her from consequences. Melissa called 9 minutes after the message delivered. Eric put her on speaker because he did not want me guessing later. I could not see her face, but she sounded exactly the way a person looks when the blood drains out of them, panicked, furious, and suddenly terrified. Are you serious? What is this supposed to mean? Eric said. It means exactly what it says. How am I supposed to pay for my apartment? She demanded. How am I supposed to buy food for my daughter? You are an adult, he said. Avery is in school. You have a degree. You have had 7 years of support. Melissa made a choking sound, like the facts offended her. You can't just cut me off in one day. I can stop paying for things that were never my responsibility. Because Olivia cried? She snapped. Because you abandoned my child in a locked room and told her to stay quiet. There was a pause. For the first time, I heard fear under her anger. Eric, please. I made a mistake. He looked at Olivia's closed bedroom door at the top of the stairs. No, you made a choice. Then he added the sentence she had never heard from him. And your choice changed what I owe you. Melissa tried every door she had used on him before. She cried first, saying she was overwhelmed, that single mothers did not get breaks, that Heather had always judged her. When that did not work, she turned hard. You're my older brother. You're supposed to help me. You don't destroy your sister over one bad afternoon. Eric leaned his elbows on the kitchen island. The mistake was not just today. The mistake was me paying for your life for 7 years while you refused to build one. Melissa went silent. He kept going, and I could hear how much it cost him. Why don't you have a job while Avery is in school? Why aren't you using your degree? Why does every boss, schedule, commute, and rule become impossible the second you're expected to handle it? You don't understand how hard my life is, she said. Then explain it without blaming everyone else. She had no answer. A second later, the line went dead. Eric stared at the phone like it had become heavier in his hand. For years, she had ended conversations by making him fix the feelings she created. This time, the quiet after her call was the first quiet she had not controlled. For a few minutes, Eric did not move. Then he sat at the table and rubbed both hands over his face. Did I go too far? He asked. I knew that question came from years of Janet's voice, Bill's disappointment, Melissa's emergencies, and his own fear of becoming cruel. I sat across from him. No. He looked up like he had expected a softer answer. I gave him the truth I had swallowed for years. I think you did the right thing. I support you completely. And honestly, I would have cut her off long ago. His eyes filled, but he blinked it back. You never said that. Because I thought it had to come from you, I said. I didn't want to be the wife who forced you to choose. But she hurt our daughter, Eric. There is no neutral anymore. He reached across the table, and I took his hand. Upstairs, Olivia's bedroom door creaked open. She peeked down and asked, "Is Aunt Melissa coming back?" Eric stood right away. No, Bug. Not ever. Olivia looked at me for confirmation, so I nodded. That tiny nod seemed to settle her whole body. That evening, the second front arrived in the form of his parents. Janet and Bill came without warning, parking crooked in our driveway like they expected the house to rearrange itself around them. Eric had changed the door code, so they had to knock. That alone seemed to insult them. Once Eric let them in, Janet did not ask about Olivia first. She walked in with her purse clutched to her chest and said, "We need to talk about what you've done to your sister." Bill stood behind her, arms crossed, already disappointed. "Melissa is a single mother," Janet said. "She is overwhelmed and scared. You know how she gets." Eric answered from the living room. "Olivia was overwhelmed and scared while Melissa was at a movie." Bill exhaled. "No one is saying Melissa handled it perfectly. She locked my child in a room." Janet waved one hand. "She made a poor judgment call. Family does not punish family like this." I stayed near the couch, close enough for Eric to know I was there, quiet enough to let the old script reveal itself. Then Janet said, "The CPS call was unnecessary." They had not come to understand. They had come to reinstall him. Eric asked one question. "Do you expect me to keep paying her bills?" Janet's expression softened in the rehearsed way I knew too well. "Until she gets back on her feet, yes. You can set boundaries without being heartless." Something in Eric's face changed. "Back on her feet from what? A 7-year vacation from responsibility?" Bill said, "Watch your tone." Eric stood. "No, you watch what you are asking me to do. I paid her rent. I paid her utilities. I bought groceries. I covered school supplies. I gave her chance after chance while my own family planned around her failures. And she repaid us by locking my daughter in a room and going to the cinema." Janet's mouth tightened. "She is your sister." Eric's voice cracked then, but he did not stop. "I am your son too. Don't you care what this has done to me? Don't you care what she did to Olivia?" For once, Janet had no quick answer. I sat beside him and took his hand. Bill muttered, "You're really choosing this?" Eric opened the front door. "I'm choosing my wife and child. Leave." And for the first time, they did. 6 months later, our lives are different. We are no contact with Melissa, and Eric barely speaks to Janet and Bill. At first it felt strange. Then came peace. No emergency calls during dinner. No guilt texts before payday. No last-minute babysitting, unpaid errands, or rent payments leaving our account before we could think about our own needs. Olivia is doing better. She still remembers the locked room, but she knows Melissa will never be allowed near her again. We spend real time with her now, not time squeezed between solving Melissa's problems. CPS did not take Avery, but they stayed involved and checked on Melissa. Without Eric's money, Melissa lost her apartment, moved back in with Janet and Bill, and got a shop job with regular shifts. I do not celebrate it, but I do not feel guilty. Eric is not cruel now. He is firmer. He says no without apologizing. He did not just cut Melissa off financially, he cut himself free. So now I keep wondering, was I right to leave that decision to my husband, since it was his sister and his family, or should I have told him much earlier that supporting Melissa was destroying us? And was he right to cut her off all at once after what she did to our daughter? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.
I have started narrating my own stories, so if that's something you would like to listen to, then check it out. There should be a link in the description and probably somewhere on the screen.